All right. Hi, guys. This is going to be a book from Grandpa. And since we're all kind of hidden inside this in our houses right now because of this virus, this is the only way I can do anything with you guys. So I'm going to read you a book. And this is kind of a long book, 260 some pages. So it's going to take some while, but this virus thing is going to take some while. So the whole thing's going to be a very long time, and so this will be loaded onto YouTube, I hope. But as you remember, I use kind of an old computer, and since I use an old computer, maybe it may not work just how it's supposed to work, but it'll work how Grandpa wants it to work, and that's the way it will work. Oops, something popped up here. I don't want to do that. Okay, let's turn that off. Okay, so I'll load this onto YouTube so you can watch what you want when you want to watch. How about a joke to start off with? What did one toilet say to another toilet? Well, you don't know? Well, it says, "You look flushed." Why are teddy bears never hungry? Because they're already stuffed. All right, enough of the jokes. Okay, now you can share this with anyone you want. If you want to show your grandpa reading a book. The book is called The Rope in the Jungle. Here, I'll move that up to the, let's see. Rope in the Jungle. Okay, this is by one of my favorite authors, Gary Jennings, and he wrote some great books, and this is a children's book that he wrote. Here's the introduction. It starts, it says, "It was 4 miles long, weighed almost 18,000 pounds, and was somewhere in the darkest reaches of the Mexican jungle. It was an extraordinary rope, and when it snapped in two, master rope maker Caleb Crabtree of Massachusetts received an urgent summons to sail immediately to Mexico to splice it back together." Now that's what this book is about. A rope in the jungle, and a master rope knot tire who had to splice this rope back together. So I'm going to we'll upload this onto YouTube, and then I don't know how this is going to work, but we'll figure this out one way or another. But here we go. Settle back. All right. Pour yourself a beer or a rum or something like that. I have coffee here, and or maybe a soda if you want a soda, and enjoy the book from Grandpa. Before the beginning. From the study where I am writing, I can look across the hall and see a tall mahogany brass pendulum grandfather clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Oh, and I tell you that I'm going to do animations during this. Okay. It has stood in the same spot in our big house for more than a century. My ancestors brought it from Virginia when they took up this plantation, or hacienda, or orange groves in the Val Naraparancho of northern Mexico. My grandfather, on my mother's side, is named Clark, since the Mexicans pronounce the name clock. And because of the coincidence of our actually owning such a beautiful thing, we have long called the old gentleman Grandfather Clock. His name really is Glenn Clark III, and he is now well along in years, though still spry. So is Grandmother Clock. However, when he was a boy, there were 3 Glens in the family himself, his father, and his father's father, and that made for some confusion. The eldest Glen was known as Glenn. His son was Glenn Jr., and there was his son, eventually to be my grandfather. It seemed awkward to refer to this youngest Glen as 3 or third. He was humorously dubbed Trey, which is what the 3-spot card in a deck of cards is called. So I shall call him Trey Clark. Throughout this tale of his adventures, which I am about to relate, he certainly was not a grandfather clock in those days. Oh, did I go too far? Oh, he certainly was not a grandfather clock in those days, nor suspected that he ever would be. Coffee time. He was just a young boy, and for a while there was some danger that he would never get any older. I sometimes ask myself, and where should I be then? But this is a story, his story, not mine. Part of it took place on the high seas, but most of it in deep jungles of the most remote part of Mexico, nearly 1,000 miles south of the hacienda, in a faraway Mexican state called Chiapas. Though it happened more than 70 years ago, I have heard Grandfather Clock tell the story again and again. So many times I get bored of hearing the same story. I've also recently gone myself to explore these fearsome jungles, and I can testify that they have changed but little in 70 years. From my own experience, I believe I can tell you accurately not only what my grandfather saw and heard and did, but how he felt during all the adventures that befell him. I will tell it accurately, but with a few reservations. I am going to confuse the locals and compass directions slightly, and to change a few place names and the names of 1 or 2 native tribes. I have a reason. Those formidable, forbidding jungles and their scattered Indian inhabitants have remained almost undisturbed and unsullied since before the white man came to America. I would like them to stay that way, so I do not want this story to inspire hordes of tourists and curiosity seekers and treasure hunters to invade those jungles looking for the maiden sacrifices, or the Zooey tried fortune in gold, or any of the other wonders that young Trey Clark found there, and some of which I now seen for myself. It is said that there is absolutely straight lines in nature. Certainly, there are no natural straight lines in the deep jungles of Chiapas. Everything is a confusion of rounded or jagged forms, pointed or ragged forms, all overlapping and overgrowing in biliary disarray. The tree trunks taper upwards in gentle curves, or they are gnarled and twisty in an old man's bones, or they are humpy and knobby as they are formed up out of the ground and then baked solid in the jungle heat. These trees stand so close together that the crowns intermesh in a canopy of leaves and fronds and tendrils so dense that it keeps all but an occasional flutter of sunlight from reaching the ground below. Even when a storm bursts in a drenching downpour, it may take 20 minutes for the rain to percolate through that leaf cover and drip to the ground. The trees are twined about by climbing plants and orchids and morning glories and creepers and tulipan flowers. They are draped and swagged by dangling vines and loopy lianas, and beards of Spanish moss. From around their own roots sprout the fountains of giant ferns and plants with leaves as big as umbrellas when it rains. The very animals of the jungle did not even travel in straight lines, though most of them travel under cover of darkness. The magnificent dapple-colored tiger or jaguar pads the jungle floor on wary and circuitous paths and lies motionless on a tree branch, waiting for prey to pass beneath. Smaller cats like the ocelot and the marquet and the common mixel slink even more cautiously on roundabout routes, and so do the armadillo, the anteater, the timid jalap, and even the bulky trunk-snouted tapir. The long-armed spider monkey and the howler monkey swoop and swing, looping through the high tree cover. Vampire bats flutter as erratically as native butterflies, which are almost as big as bats. The giant flying ants, Naku and the hangman wasp buzz through the air in zigzags. So here is a map of where we are. Can you see the map? All right. We're way down at the bottom, right here in Chiapas. Okay. The brilliantly varicolored 4-foot-long iguana lizard pursues a meandering course through the jungle. Tremendous and powerful boa constrictors. I'm being eaten by a boa constrictor, and smaller but far nastier snakes. The ugly brown nuaka and the fer de lance and the yellow barba twine sinuously through the underbrush and lurk in coils to strike. I have said that there are no natural straight lines in the Chiapas jungles. However, a long time ago, in May of the year of 1905, there was a man-made straight line. Coffee time. One of the deepest riches of that jungle. It was a thick rope. It was fully 4 miles long. Stretched taut and straight, it ran around a big pulley wheel on the riverbank, so its double line extended for exactly 2 miles from the riverside up the slope of the low mountain. The pulley wheel was turned by a rather derelict steam engine, tended by a worker who had been recruited from the Kamataleco tribe farther west. The lower line of the rope had a big square wooden tubs attached at intervals, carrying some curious material down from the top of the mountain. As each bucket approached the wheel at the bottom, a primitive tripper mechanism disengaged it from the rope and it dropped to the ground. One of the Kamateco's duties was to shovel each tub's contents onto a growing heap by the riverside, then reattach the empty bucket to the upper line of the rope to be carried back up the mountain. Perhaps he was a careless worker, or maybe he was just unlucky, because one day in that May of 1905, the rope gave a ringing twang, whipped loose from the big pulley and lashed out, flinging full and empty buckets in all directions, demolished the flimsy palm-thatched engine house, cut the Kamantoko worker precisely in half, then flailed away into the thick surrounding greenery. The straight line was gone. The rope in the jungle had broken. In October of that year, 1905, a small and rusty tramp steamer lay moored to a Boston wharf, its derricks busily plucking boxes of bales of cargo from the dock and lowering them through its deck hatches into its hold. The only person on deck or the dock not working frantically was a young, fair-haired, snub-nosed boy, nattily dressed in a Norfolk jacket, corduroy knickerbockers, and high-buttoned shoes. He stood leaning against the ship's rail, gazing out rather morosely at the dockside street, lined with chandeliers' shops, pawn shops, sailors' slop shops, and grog shops. And along this street, there now came hurrying a short, pudgy gentleman wearing a slimy blue serge suit, a high-crowned derby hat, and sporting a fringe of short white whiskers that ran from his ears down his chin but left the rest of his face bare. He had no whiskers here. He was carrying a suitcase and a large, oddly shaped leather satchel. The boy could see, even from where he stood, high above the wharf, that the little old man was sweating and puffing. The gentleman stopped and sat down his luggage to consult a piece of paper in his hand, then appeared to check it against his name, dimly painted on the ship's rust-streaked stern. The ship was called the SS Godspeed. He picked up his bags again and struggled up the steep gangplank to the ship's deck. There he addressed a grimy, shirtless man who was waving hand signals, and the crewman operating the derrick windlass. "Excuse me, Captain." "Give way, mate," the sailor barked rudely, "or they'll be setting that bloody tractor on your bloody head."